Welcome back and thank you for staying with KTN Prime. Now we dive into a conversation, as I earlier mentioned. We're talking about education. Where exactly are we when it comes to the education sector? And joining me for this particular conversation, to my far right, Dr. Tom Kuja, an educationist and researcher. Good evening. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you very much.
And next to me, we have Akala Misori, KUPPET Secretary General, and that is the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers. Good evening. Thank you. Always a pleasure to have you.
Good evening, everyone.
All right. Yeah. Before we even start this conversation, I want us to listen to what the Treasury CES, John Mbadi, said last week together with President William Ruto yesterday.
We don't have the capacity as at now to finance free primary, free...
Education cannot be compromised. We cannot compromise access. We cannot compromise quality. We cannot compromise affordability, and we cannot compromise relevance. It must be what we are looking for.
All right, Akala, maybe I'll start with you. On one end, we're seeing the Treasury CS say, you know what, we cannot afford this. And then President William Ruto comes and says, we need to ensure that this works. But then also, I understand today the Education CS did say that that statement was taken out of context and they meant this financial year or the previous financial year and not the 2025-2026 financial year. There seems to be a lot that is being said that is confusing the stakeholders. What is your thoughts on this?
First, let me say that I'm glad the President had to make all the correction about what the financiers had committed to saying that there was no capacity in government to finance free primary and free secondary education. The President is well aware that Kenya has a constitutional provision where the right of the child supersedes any other right. And being the CS for finance for this matter, Honorable Mbadi ought to have consulted widely before going to commit before committee or parliament on the statement that there's lack of capacity in government. Where the right of the child is committed, then there must be deliberate attempt to plan and to execute such plan. But we have been seeing progressive arrangement such that from 2018, the government has not been remitting the actual figures which were committed as early as the time of Kibaki. And that means that the government wanted to privatize education. For this matter, I would think that while maybe Honorable Mbadi was very honest in his statement, but it also shows that the government has not been prioritizing education. And that lack of concern for the child now draws us to understand why in this country the priority is and supervision of government expenditure rests with Parliament, and therefore Parliament has failed in its core mandate to ensure that they oversee and allocate sufficient funds to finance education, such that nobody can go to a committee of Parliament to say that we lack the capacity. Then what do we have as a nation? What capacity do we have in this nation to do what? What do we plan? What then is the priority? If it is not education, it is not health, and it is not security. What else is our priority? So I feel there is nothing like Honorable Mbadi saying that he was quoted out of context. He said it and he was reported verbatim. Yes, so he should chew the bullet, and it shows that he lacks the capacity to head that docket.
All right, Dr. Ari, coming to you, do you think it's misplaced priorities by the government?
Yes, thank you, Ashley. First of all, when governments make comments, they should be comments that are coming from some level of consensus. You know, CS Mbadi cannot say one thing and then the president comes back and corrects. You know, the president came to correct what Mbadi was saying, that there's no money to fund the education system. We know that 28% of our total budget as from the UNESCO statistics and UNESCO convention ratified by the Kenyan space, that 600 billion is given each year, financial year, to facilitate our education system. But now, why is he making comments to the effect that there is no money? And even if you look at, for example, the money that was allocated for education, 22,000 shillings, 244, this money is not forthcoming on time. School principals, school heads have been crying ever since that they are not able to get this particular money on time, so that they plan for it. And even if you look at the capitation ratio, 30-20%, it's not being honored. The 11,122 shillings that was supposed to hit the school accounts never did that. They only sent 6,000 shillings. All right? So this is crippling education. And I think education stakeholders must not sit at their coaches. All right? They must come out clearly and defend the education system in this particular country. Yeah. And I want to ask CS Mbadi, please, you can play around with any other thing, but don't play around the lives of children. Do what Kibaki did so that we change the lives of our children today.
Okay. And you know, he's raised the issue of the late President Mwai Kibaki. Perhaps for context, let's go back, because Kenya tried free education in the 90s. It did not work. It was not successful. But come 2003, the then President, Mwai Kibaki, seemed to have gotten the right formula. Perhaps from where you sit, sir, what did he do that was so right that we actually got it right for the first time?
I don't think he did any magic, but he only prioritized education and just executed the plans on how to deliver on free primary education. Considering that he himself is an economist, he knew very well that what supersedes any execution is planning. So Kibaki administration planned well to execute this, and which the subsequent presidents have failed to address. That there is lack of focus when it comes to planning, and therefore there is always been an excuse that we have lacked the capacity. What then do we have capacity to do as a nation? Yeah. We can only say that we have the capacity to prepare our youth for the future, and that preparation of the youth is through education. If a country or a government does not prioritize education, then that government lacks the moral authority to govern. And that is what authority Kibaki did. He had the moral authority to govern, and he knew very well that governing a nation which is educated is better than having that nation which is not educated. So he prioritized education. So what I must say must be done 3 times is prioritize education. Then we shall get there.
Okay. Yes. Do you think there's goodwill to prioritize?
Yes, actually. President Kibaki's, we call it a magic card, was political commitment that followed his manifesto. Yeah. So a manifesto during campaigns must be followed by a political goodwill. And this is why he got it right. Now, when he introduced free primary education in 2003, the capitation that was there, for example, the 1,000 shillings, 1,020 shillings in 2003, this money was coming, all right? This money was coming. However, it was dealing with other challenges that included infrastructure, teachers, because now the ratio, the number of students.
All right, Dr. Just hold your thought kindly. Sorry, there's an issue with your mic and we're trying to fix that. But coming to you, Akelo, so if you look at what Dr. initially talked about, this capitation disbursement ratio, 50, 30, 20. That's how it should be. Schools were expecting, for example, this particular term, 6,673 per student. Majority, if I'm not wrong, got around 3,471, which should be about half of that. Some were forced to close early because, you know what, they cannot afford to keep students there. And operations in schools equally are lagging behind. Who do we blame for this systematic, for lack of a better word, policy failures? Initially you said Parliament, but is the sole blame just placed on Parliament?
Now, there are two two groups of people who have failed Kenyans in this. We have the ministry which is supposed to be in charge of policy. It is not because we lack policy framework. The policy framework had established that we need to disburse 22,400 shillings for secondary school going learners in this respect. But in an event that that money was not disbursed, it means that it failed at the execution, which of course you saw what the Cabinet Secretary for Finance or for Treasury was trying to say, that they lack the capacity. So it is Treasury which failed us. It is Treasury which failed us. And it is the Minister for Education who also failed Kenyans by failure to tell Kenyans that I have not received this money and therefore I cannot disperse what I don't have. And therefore, that is where we have, so the whole thing is systemic in the sense that the government as a whole has failed to prioritize education. They want to push Kenyans to have private education. This is what's happening, because in an event that you have failed to disburse, then it means that somebody else must provide education. You know, one thing which you have mentioned here, that only 3,000 shillings was disbursed this term. That one was not the money meant for this term. It was the money meant for the previous term. For this term, no money has been disbursed to schools. And that is the truth of the matter. In fact, if it ever came, then it was basically just to fulfill the promise that we have. This is what we have. And I hope you saw what the Cabinet Secretary for Education was saying today, that we will do. He did not say this is what we are doing. My little English tells me that when you say that we will do, you instead of saying we shall do, and that Cabinet Secretary is a lawyer, it is an indication that we are living in a perpetual state of uncertainty, making all Kenyans become so anxious, parents become so anxious, such that in the previous week I did indicate that parents should brace to pay fees next term, because there is no goodwill from government to disburse. I only came to be consoled when the president chose to tell Kenyans that we cannot compromise on access, we cannot compromise on quality, and all that goes with it. That one is the only consolation that I have, and I thank him for that. If he lives to that and tells the minister or the cabinet secretary for finance to disburse money, then we will be home and dry. But if it doesn't happen, it means that we are planning to make Kenya to have parents to pay for schooling of their children.
Okay, Dr. Even as you finish your earlier point and add into this, I mean, these are the same parents who right now are reeling from the high costs of living.
Yes.
People cannot even afford a day-to-day meal.
Yes.
Yet here we are, the burden of school fees is going to go back to them. Please add on to that.
Okay, let's say this, that let the government of Kenya fulfill its mandate that it took oath to implement of education. The parents already have enough to carry. They have enough to contribute in the education of their children. At this particular point in time, let us avoid this show for now, because parents are anxious. They don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. They don't know what is going to happen in the future of their children. The high cost of living, the education is becoming expensive, while it is supposed to be universal. Just to mention, to follow it up with my earlier point, how did Kibaki get it? Now, Akala Misori has talked about prioritization, but I will follow it up with the political goodwill. When the president came and spoke, he spoke very well, because we were really waiting for him for his comment. So that for us to ensure that there's transition, there is access, there is retention, there is quality going to our education system, the monies, these things about monies, Ashley, let the monies that were allocated for education, the 600 billion, go to what they're supposed to do. We don't want to hear issues to do with schools receiving capitation, ghost schools receiving capitation, surely as a country. And people are just there. No one is even pointing at who did what. So these are the issues here. Because when we hear, for example, and our unionists here and the parents here, that there are certain schools that received funds that they ought not to have received. And this is a report that was tabled. So these are the issues that are really bothering us. What we are saying is that Kenya is a rich country. We know we can fund our education very, very well. But if it's a question of systems, can we strengthen our systems? Can we strengthen our monitoring system so that we are accountable for these particular funds? Because these funds, to some extent, when it goes down to those particular schools and institutions, it is looted. It's like people are looting everywhere. When they look at the money, they want to steal it. But they're stealing the money that is belonging to a poor child. Actually, when you take 1,400 shillings meant for our primary school students and disburse only 800 shillings, what are you doing? You are even stealing to a poor child that his only life and hope is clinging to the pedals of education. So this must stop. And I want to call upon the president, because I know he's listening, that president to get the right people in education docket. Kenya is full of scholars and educationists who are able to run those particular ministries. Let us strengthen the capacity of the quality assurance and standards. That is the role, that is what they're supposed to do. Monitor the institution, see how learning is going on. Let them not sit in their offices. Let them go out there and do what they are supposed to do, because they're being paid by taxpayers' money.
Yeah. Coming to you, Akala, I mean, he's raised an issue of ghost schools. But just the other day, the Prime CS, Musalia Mudavadi, accused education officials of misusing up to 2 billion shillings in capitation funds and vowed on a digital crackdown to stop the theft. Whether it's through NEMIS or not, this issue of corruption is embedded deep. Perhaps your thoughts on this?
Ashley, I don't want to subscribe to the school of thought of ghost schools. I don't think it can happen. But now that the Auditor General, an institution which is tasked with the mandate to find what happened with the allocation of resources, I tend to believe that this is a terrible crime. I don't even want to talk about it as corruption. That is crime. I don't know why the DCI has not descended on the ministry to unearth the level of this mischief in the Ministry of Education. How can we have good schools where over 170 billion disappears? I think that one is unfortunate. It is unfortunate to the extent that it is not believable. I would expect the government agencies tasked with getting to the root cause of criminal activity to deal with this issue as a crime. I can't believe that there are ghost schools, because a school, by any definition, must be in a given location, and it must be having certain personnel working there. How would they send money to an institution with a head or a principal of a school, with 10 teachers, with boards of management, and with fictitious accounts? It cannot happen in an independent state like Kenya. And therefore, I would believe that if there are ghost schools, then these ghost schools must be subjected to forensic audit, not now by the Auditor General, but the DCI, to unearth this. That is when we can pride ourselves that there is accountability in this nation.
Yeah. So in an ideal situation, moving away from ghost schools, back to capitation, in an ideal situation, how much would it be needed for each child, for a child to have quality education? How much should be set aside?
As we talk today, I think the money which is supposed to be in a day school ought to be more than 32,000 shillings.
Okay.
That is the ideal situation for a secondary school, for provision of a secondary school education, if it is a day school. But we realized that the money which was allocated nearly 10 years ago. And it does not factor in the challenges which have gone in through inflation and other other economic circumstances. So retaining it at 22,000 shillings and now reducing it to 17,000 shillings and maybe to 15,000 shillings is something which undermines now the provision of education which has quality.
Okay. Daktari,
Yes.
CS Mbadi suggested the rechanneling of bursary funds from NGCDF to just sort of fill in the gaps when it comes to capitation. Of course, this is a proposal that is not going to see the day of light because of legislators, but is it a viable solution?
Yes, actually, it is a viable solution. But I sympathize with him. To him, it's a goodwill from him, but it's going to be a mountain because this is what legislators feed on. Okay? When you touch NGCDF, this is what makes parliamentarians shine. This is what makes them, we see them because of this particular funding. However, the idea is very good because there has been fragmentation of funds that are supposed to be converged together, put in a pool to support education system. So if this particular money, for example, comes in and join hands or facilitates the Ministry of Education capitation, I think these particular funds are able to do wonders. But again, no one wants to leave it. Even for the women, for example, women reps, there's a fund, education fund for the women reps. If you touch that particular area, you'll be touching a live wire. And this is the issue. Now, even parliamentarians themselves, some of them have to be blamed because of the deteriorating level of our education system. How? Look at what parliamentarians have been doing. They have extended the mandate of the Teacher Service Commission to themselves. These are the guys who are employing teachers in funerals and Arambis, and there are clips everywhere. So where are we headed to? You are giving somebody employment letters to go and distribute in Arambis and funerals. What is the role of Teacher Service Commission? Has the Teacher Service Commission been crippled? Because when you look at these particular things and then you look at the funding, then you realize there's some level of problem. Our education discourse is not in a path that is supposed to be in. Can we leave responsibilities of institutions that have been given the mandate to run education system? Mm-hmm. And therefore, when we give the mandate of this particular institution, we want some level of accountability. Some level of accountability. So CS should not tell us that there is no money that is able to fund education system, while us, the viewers and the educationists, we are seeing a lot of looting and pilferages of education funds, denying the right to education of our young children.
Okay. Akala, sorry, someone just sent a text asking you to paint a picture of how schools are being run right now, with the fact that there is a delayed release of capitation. What is the situation on the ground exactly?
It is terribly a challenge to our institutional managers because their parents are asked from time to time. Now, because the schools are not allowed to collect monies, they are asked to bring rims on false caps. So that is when the schools now can manage to buy materials for learning, for writing material, for example. Mm-hmm. So parents, every learner is asked to go to school with rims of false caps. Some parents are even asked to pay in kind for this purpose. Mm-hmm. Because remember, just this term, a school was taken to court for charging extra levies.
Yes. Because
the school was given more learners than the school capacity could hold. And therefore, the learners did not have a dormitory. So one of the parents went to court because the parent was asked to pay an extra 20,000 shillings to build a dormitory of the school. So you can see that schools are now being creative by charging extra levies to run programs of the school. Because the ministry, the Teacher Service Commission, does not want the principals of schools or heads of schools to close down the schools. Mm. They want the school to run. And you can see, if you have been given 3,000 shillings to run a tuition program for a whole term, how will you do? How will that one do? With the cost of fuel rising every day, and with the cost of food or all these other items you need to pay for the support staff, what do you do? I think it has been very difficult. Yeah.
Okay. On that note, I want us to take a short break, but when we come back, of course, we'll continue the conversation and look at the solutions going forward, but also the teacher shortage in the country. And what about the transition that is supposed to happen next year? All this coming your way shortly.